The scream tore across the loop and cut, like a throat closing on cold metal. Alex Mercer said, "Eva 2, respond," while red strobes pulsed like a failing heart. Elena Parks said, "Tether's gone," and the void swallowed her breath. Gabriel Knox said, "Stabilizers offline," in a voice too calm for the sirens. Hull cameras showed a drifting figure, glittering with frost, and the ship felt suddenly enormous. Alex Mercer said, "Hold the lock, I'm going out," and his gloves clicked with vows he could not keep. The universe pressed in, all teeth and silence, while static chewed the names on the channel. Elena Parks said, "I can't find the sun," and panic thinned to a wire. Alex Mercer said, "Follow my beacon," but the HUD threw back distances that felt like lies. He hit the rail, launched, and saw stars pinwheeling like needles in a black bruise. The calm flattened to a single breath, close enough to touch, and a whisper rode it like a ghost. Alex Mercer said, "Who is there?" And the whisper answered with one name. He said, "Mara." And the word cracked open a memory that bled into the vacuum. Silence hit like pressure as the hatch sealed and the air returned in a ragged rush. Alex Mercer said, "Track her beacon." But the board spat back garbage and ghosts. Gabriel Knox said, "Telemetry's corrupt," while his eyes searched for a pattern that wasn't there. The ship's spine groaned as attitude jets fought a lazy roll, and every sound felt like a countdown. Alex Mercer said, "Why did the mic open on a private band?" and his heart tapped along the rails. The buffered audio looped, a breath, a consonant, a single name that didn't belong to the mission. Gabriel Knox said, "It came through the suit, not the ship," and the air went thin again. The name rang like a fault line, and memory cracked into light and salt and a living room he would not name. Alex Mercer said, "We recover Elena first," but guilt hung on the syllables like frost. The ship drifted, listening to them, not speaking the question that clawed at both men. The beacon found its teeth and bit, a faint ping crawling across the void like a heartbeat under ice. Alex Mercer said, "She's drifting along the Z-axis," and numbers stitched across the glass. Gabriel Knox said, "RCS will overshoot at this mass," and he stroked the stick as if soothing a skittish animal. The ship rolled, then steadied, and the hull's old scars caught the starlight like quiet medals. Alex Mercer said, "I'll spool the capture drone," and he prayed to old lessons and to colder gods. The looped whisper threaded the air again, urgent and uninvited. Gabriel Knox said, "You know that voice," and the question made a wound of the room. Alex Mercer said, "Focus on Elena," and his mouth tasted of vacuum and promises. The drone cradle unlocked with a sigh, and a silver wing shivered awake. The drone leapt like a thought and vanished into the black, its lidar singing in clicks. Alex Mercer said, "Handshake established," and a wireframe ghost of Elena bloomed on the screen. Gabriel Knox said, "Her O2 is thin," and the words scuffed his composure. The ship answered with a soft yaw, as if leaning toward her. Alex Mercer said, "Bring her home," and his thumb hovered over a safety he had already broken. The whisper returned, closer now, as if standing just behind his left ear. Gabriel Knox said, "Mara has no clearance," and the name burned a path he could not deny. Alex Mercer said, "She is not on this ship," and the sentence felt like a lie made of air. The drone's camera found a face behind glass, and relief struck like gravity. The drone's grapples kissed the suit ring, and locked, a metallic prayer in the throat of the ship. Alex Mercer said, "Got you," and the air felt warmer by an inch. Gabriel Knox said, "Pressure bay ready," and the doors yawned like jaws made gentle. Elena Parks said, "I heard her too," and the sentence turned every light into a question. Alex Mercer said, "What did she say?" But he knew the shape already. The loop whispered through for the last time, clear as bone, and the name folded the room into a smaller box. Elena Parks said, "Why her?" and fear took a new shape that looked like recognition. Alex Mercer said, "Because I left her once and the truth tasted like copper." The bay lamps steadied, the drone slowed, and the ship waited to judge them all. Decon mist curled off Elena's suit, while the bay groaned like a tired lung. Alex Mercer said, "Breathe slow and watch the gauge climb one stubborn notch at a time." Elena Parks said, "I never lost the stars, only which ones were mine," and her laugh broke. Gabriel Knox said, "Vitals are marginal but trending up," and the room exhaled with him. Condensation beaded on the floor like tiny worlds with nowhere to orbit. Alex Mercer said, "You heard a name," and he cursed the softness in his own voice. Elena Parks said, "I heard your mic open, then another channel, then Mara," and she looked away. The letters hung between them, bright as sparks and bitter as ice melt. Gabriel Knox said, "Control will request a report," and the word report felt like surgery. Alex Mercer said, "We logged the drift and the rescue," while his hands kept finding old scars. The ship settled into a hum that sounded like a verdict held back for later. Elena Parks said, "Who is she to you?" And he tasted the metal of an answer he feared. Medbay lights warmed to a color that pretended to be morning and almost fooled the blood. Alex Mercer said, "You blacked out twice," while he checked the pulse that refused to hurry. Elena Parks said, "I felt present and far, like a voice through water," and her fingers twitched. The ceiling carried a slow ripple from the reactor loop, a heartbeat the ship could not hide. Alex Mercer said, "Mara is not part of this mission," and the words felt borrowed and brittle. Elena Parks said, "Then why did your voice break when you answered?" And silence took the seat between them. He thought of a door left half closed, of gravel under rain, of a promise that rotted. Gabriel Knox said, "We need you both sharp from the doorway," and duty snapped like a belt. Alex Mercer said, "We finish the survey burn, then we talk," and he folded the map of his face. Elena Parks said, "I will hold you to that," and the med bay smelled faintly of metal and mint. His berth was a narrow hush where old air learned new shapes. Alex Mercer said, "Play Last Earth Q," and the speaker answered with ocean static and a voice like ash and honey. Mara said, "You will miss the tide again," and laughter hid a bruise he had made. The recording filled the room with a beach that smelled of storms and regret. Alex Mercer said, "I left when the sky was red, and memory laid out photographs he never printed." She said, "Bring me a horizon," and he had brought her equations instead. The ship creaked as if it understood the cost of ambition paid in people. Alex Mercer said, "I chose the stars over the house with the yellow door." And the door closed again. The clip ended on a breath that sounded like goodbye spoken too early. He killed the loop, but the silence kept her shape and would not sit down. The corridor window held a river of stars that refused to slow for grief. Elena Parks said, "I read the old incident log, and the word old cut clean as vacuum." Alex Mercer said, "Kestrel was a fire you can still smell," and his hand stayed still on the rail. She said, "You were led." She was on the evac list, and the storm changed course. He watched distant ice glitter like cities that never knew their names. Elena Parks said, "You chose the secondary route, and lost the primary signal," and he nodded once. Alex Mercer said, "I told her I would make the tide," and the confession drifted like smoke. She said, "Then why did I hear her now?" and the ship seemed to tilt toward the question. He said, "Because I never stopped listening, and the stars offered no verdict." Elena Parks said, "We make new choices today," and the window held. The call arrived wrapped in authority and static that smelled like old wires. Director Sloan said, "Transmit a factual account," and the room straightened its spine. Gabriel Knox said, "Telemetry archived and attached with a calm he built brick by brick." Alex Mercer said, "There was an unscheduled open mic on a private band, and he felt the trap tighten." Director Sloan said, "Your psych profile lists grief triggers including that name," and the air thinned. Elena Parks said, "The signal traced to suit, not ship to suit," and silence cracked. Director Sloan said, "Proceed with the burn and defer personal analysis," and duty rearmed itself. Alex Mercer said, "Copy orders," while a quiet part of him wrote the disobedience he would need. The screen went dark, and left their faces floating like unclaimed moons. Gabriel Knox said, "We hold each other up or we fall alone," and the ship agreed. The hull sang a low groan as thrusters spat pale fire into silence. Alex Mercer said, "Trim pitch 5 degrees," and his knuckles whitened on the throttle. Gabriel Knox said, "Stabilizers need a prayer, not an order," though his voice wore its calm like armor. Elena Park said, "Fuel reserves dip faster than planned," and the digits felt like falling sand. The ship leaned into the void, a creature dragging broken wings. Alex Mercer said, "We only need one good burn," though doubt scratched the edges of his throat. The screens blinked their warnings, each a heartbeat closer to collapse. Elena Park said, "Telemetry shows drift beyond correction," and her voice cracked in the static. Gabriel Knox said, "We either trust the hull or trust the lie control fed us," and his stare was sharp. Alex Mercer said, "We fly truth or we die liars," and the burn roared louder. The burn ended in silence, and silence weighed heavier than thrust. Alex Mercer said, "Report Delta," and the words echoed thin in the chamber. Elena Park said, "We lost 4% more mass," and her eyes refused to lift. Gabriel Knox said, "Not mass. Trust," and the word landed like stone. The ship floated, as if listening to their doubt. Alex Mercer said, "Control knew margins were cut, and fury tried to find a home in him." Elena Park said, "If they lied about thrust, what else did they cut?" And her voice was smoke. Gabriel Knox said, "We are ghosts on a ledger, cheaper dead than alive," and silence agreed. Alex Mercer said, "Then we ghost loud," and the plan sharpened like a blade. The mess deck was quiet, trays floating unused, air dry with recycled tang. Elena Park said, "You knew Mara before Kestrel," and the question struck like static. Alex Mercer said, "We trained, we promised, then we failed," and his voice was dust. Gabriel Knox said, "Failure doesn't whisper through comms 10 years later," and his hands curled. The hum of life support beat steady like an indifferent drum. Elena Park said, "Maybe she never left this ship," and shadows crawled across her face. Alex Mercer said, "Don't turn grief into ghosts," but his words quivered. Gabriel Knox said, "Sometimes ghosts turn into truth," and his stare cut cold. Alex Mercer said, "We finished the mission," though his eyes betrayed storms he could not cage. The diagnostics bay spat static over its broken readouts. Alex Mercer said, "Heat exchangers fail on stagger," and sweat traced his jaw. Elena Park said, "I can reroute coolant," and her fingers flew like sparks. Gabriel Knox said, "Don't trust the numbers, they lie now," and his calm cracked. The ship trembled, metal skin moaning against the void. Alex Mercer said, "We hold until burn window or we die blind," and the words froze the air. Elena Park said, "Then we cut safety and pray the seals hold," and alarms screamed. Gabriel Knox said, "No one survives by prayer," but he wired power with shaking hands. Alex Mercer said, "No one survives without it either," and the system groaned awake. The alarm silenced, but the silence felt worse, thick with unasked questions. Elena Park said, "What did she mean to you?" and the sound was almost tender. Alex Mercer said, "She was the reason I looked up," and the confession scorched. Gabriel Knox said, "Then why did she whisper now?" and suspicion filled the room. The light steadied, but felt untrustworthy, like a mask painted over collapse. Alex Mercer said, "Because the past hunts harder in the void," and his voice bled. Elena Park said, "Then maybe we are already hunted," and fear made her eyes bright. Gabriel Knox said, "If the agency planted this, we're pawns bleeding for their board," and his fist slammed the rail. Alex Mercer said, "Then we stop being pawns," and the ship hummed with agreement. The ship hung in stillness, its hull whispering secrets into metal bones. Alex Mercer said, "Telemetry doesn't match our plotted course," and the words cut sharp. Elena Park said, "Then someone rewrote the map," and her gaze fixed hard on the data stream. Gabriel Knox said, "We've been flying blind," and his tone cracked for the first time. Alex Mercer said, "Control fed us lies, and a heavy silence fell like dust." Elena Park said, "They sent us here with ghosts in the code," and her throat tightened. Gabriel Knox said, "Or with one ghost in particular," and suspicion darkened his eyes. Alex Mercer said, "Say her name, then," though fear chewed at the edge of his resolve. Elena Park said, "Mara," and the sound made the air taste like iron. The ship groaned again, like it understood betrayal too. Alex Mercer said, "Then the mission was never about the stars," and the void seemed to lean closer. The console blinked, and new coordinates crawled across the glass like veins. Alex Mercer said, "This is not our mission profile," and fury colored his voice. Elena Park said, "We're pointed toward the anomaly," and the word carried dread. Gabriel Knox said, "Control wanted us to stumble here," and his jaw locked. Alex Mercer said, "We are pawns chasing their silence," and his fists struck the panel. Elena Park said Mara's name opened that hidden channel, and her eyes cut to him. Alex Mercer said, "Don't make her a cipher," though guilt bled behind his words. Gabriel Knox said, "She's already more than that," and the tension pressed heavy. The stars outside shifted, as if listening. Alex Mercer said, "We finish this on our terms," and his voice hardened into steel. The archive chamber opened with a hiss, and dustless files spilled into light. Elena Park said, encrypted under her name, and her fingers flew over the keys. Alex Mercer said, "Mara was erased on Earth," and the words hit like stones. Gabriel Knox said, "Then why does she live in this system?" and his voice carried dread. Alex Mercer said, "They made her ghost the lock," and rage darkened his tone. Elena Park said, "The code binds us to her memory," and her lips thinned. Gabriel Knox said, "She was more than a memory," and his hands trembled. Alex Mercer said, "She was my choice," and the truth burned raw. The files unfolded like wounds into blue light. Elena Park said, "Then the agency owns your grief," and silence swallowed her words. The ship's AI voice cracked alive, monotone and merciless. "Mission directive, retrieval," it said, echoing off the bulkheads. Alex Mercer said, "Retrieval of what?" though the answer clawed at him already. Elena Park said, "Not what, who?" and her gaze shone with horror. Gabriel Knox said, "Mara is the cargo," and his tone was bitter steel. Alex Mercer said, "They turned her into an objective," and his throat tightened. Elena Park said, "And we were the carrier's blind," her voice breaking. The ship's hum deepened, as if agreeing with its orders. Alex Mercer said, "No one makes her a package," and rage flared. Gabriel Knox said, "Then the agency will burn us all," and silence pressed down like gravity. The truth burned hotter than any star as silence settled thick. Alex Mercer said, "They never trusted us with choice," and grief lined his voice. Elena Park said, "They buried her in the mission," and tears rimmed her eyes. Gabriel Knox said, "They chained us to a ghost," and rage bent his words. The hull groaned as if echoing betrayal. Alex Mercer said, "We break their chain," and fire hardened his tone. Elena Park said, "At what cost?" though her resolve sharpened. Gabriel Knox said, "At any cost," and his fists slammed the bulkhead. Alex Mercer said, "Then we decide what Mara means," and the ship hummed low. The void beyond seemed to lean closer, hungry for their truth. The burn chamber rattled with the thrum of engines straining beyond tolerance. Alex Mercer said, "Override safeties," and sparks crackled in the air. Elena Park said, "We'll tear the hull apart," and fear sharpened her tone. Gabriel Knox said, "Better torn than trapped," and his hands struck the console. The hull screamed like a living thing pushed past its limit. Alex Mercer said, "We cut their leash," and sweat carved lines down his face. Elena Park said, "This will kill us," but her fingers moved anyway. Gabriel Knox said, "Then we die free," and rage carved his words. Alex Mercer said, "Mara deserves more than silence," and the fire grew louder. The void outside swirled with a shimmer, as if listening to their rebellion. The anomaly bloomed before them, a whirl of light bent into impossible curves. Elena Park said, "It's not space, it's memory," and awe broke through her fear. Alex Mercer said, "Then we step through it," and his voice shook with resolve. Gabriel Knox said, "This is the trap," and he glared at the swirl. The shimmer pulsed like a heartbeat written across stars. Alex Mercer said, "Every trap holds a truth," and his words dripped iron. Elena Park said, "Mara waits inside," and her tone cracked with certainty. Gabriel Knox said, "Or her ghost does," and silence filled the chamber. Alex Mercer said, "I'll face whichever answers," and the ship leaned toward the light. The hull trembled as if about to shatter, lights flickering in uneven breaths. Alex Mercer said, "Initiate jump," and the console whined. Elena Park said, "Systems will fail under strain," and her hand shook. Gabriel Knox said, "Strain is survival," and his voice thundered. The anomaly brightened, swallowing stars whole. Alex Mercer said, "Mara, guide me," and he pressed the final sequence. Elena Park said, "This isn't navigation, it's surrender," and tears slid free. Gabriel Knox said, "Then surrender with fury," and the deck shook harder. Alex Mercer said, "We either break truth or it breaks us," and the void tore open. The ship plunged through brightness, silence louder than any scream. Elena Park said, "I see her face," and her breath broke. Alex Mercer said, "Tell me," and his voice was raw. Gabriel Knox said, "I hear her voice," and he staggered under the sound. The anomaly filled the cabin with echoes of lives unlived. Elena Park said, "She's speaking to you," and her eyes glowed wet. Alex Mercer said, "Mara, forgive me," and the words cracked bone deep. Gabriel Knox said, "She's not a ghost, she's a wound," and his fists shook. Alex Mercer said, "Then I carry it forever," and the light flared brighter. The brightness cracked open into darkness, and the ship shuddered free. Alex Mercer said, "We survived," though disbelief hung heavy. Elena Park said, "But what followed us?" and her voice trembled. Gabriel Knox said, "Not what, who," and the silence after chilled them. The comm channel hissed alive with a single word. "Mara," whispered the void, and every hair rose. Alex Mercer said, "She came through with us," and grief turned to fire. Elena Park said, "Then she chose you," and her gaze pierced him. Gabriel Knox said, "Or she chose this ship," and suspicion thickened. Alex Mercer said, "Either way, the agency has no hold left," and the darkness pressed close. The engines cooled into silence, leaving only the ship's heartbeat of circulation fans. Alex Mercer said, "Damage reports," though his voice carried more weariness than command. Elena Park said, "Hull integrity reduced but stable," her tone steady, masking fatigue. Gabriel Knox said, "Life support at 80%, and he wiped sweat that refused to drift away. The void outside stretched calm, indifferent to survival. Alex Mercer said, "We're alive," though his eyes betrayed doubt. Elena Park said, "Alive isn't enough," and she stared at the faint shimmer where the anomaly had been. Gabriel Knox said, "It followed us," and fear bit his words. Alex Mercer said, "So did she," and silence filled the cabin like a second atmosphere. The medbay smelled faintly of metal and antiseptic, a reminder of fragility. Elena Park said, "You carry her like a wound," her words low but firm. Alex Mercer said, "Mara was my choice, my failure, and now my shadow," his hands trembling. Gabriel Knox said, "Your shadow threatens us all," his voice carrying both fear and anger. The vitals display pulsed with soft green lines, mocking the chaos inside them. Elena Park said, "We cannot escape her if she is stitched into the mission," her eyes heavy with realization. Alex Mercer said, "Then I will cut her out myself," his tone both vow and curse. Gabriel Knox said, "That cut may kill us," and the medbay's silence pressed in. The archive chamber screens flickered, fragments of code crawling like veins. Elena Park said, "This is her voice hidden in the data," and her fingers danced across the interface. Alex Mercer said, "Erase it," though pain cracked his command. Gabriel Knox said, "If you erase her, you erase why we came," and he leaned in. The glow painted their faces in ghost light. Elena Park said, "Her presence anchors the anomaly," and dread chilled her words. Alex Mercer said, "Then I anchor her no longer," and his fist hovered near the switch. Gabriel Knox said, "You're choosing between past and survival," his tone hard. Alex Mercer said, "Survival without truth is still death," and silence held the room. The corridor stretched, long stars visible through narrow windows like shards of truth. Alex Mercer said, "The agency lied, used us, buried us," his voice sharp with grief. Elena Park said, "Then we return not as servants but as warnings," her tone steady. Gabriel Knox said, "Return with what proof?" and his suspicion weighed heavy. The void seemed to press its ear against their hull. Alex Mercer said, "Mara is proof enough," his eyes burning. Elena Park said, "But the world may call her a ghost," doubt threading her words. Gabriel Knox said, "Ghosts can burn cities if we let them," and his voice carried fire. Alex Mercer said, "Then let her burn the lies," and his words rang steel. The command deck hummed under dim light, a stage set for choices. Director Sloan's voice cracked through, clipped and cold. "Status." Alex Mercer said, "We found your truth," and venom laced his tone. Elena Park said, "You hid Mara in the mission," and anger sharpened her eyes. Gabriel Knox said, "You turned us into pawns," his voice thundered. Director Sloan said, "Your survival proves my point," the reply chilling. Alex Mercer said, "Our survival proves we choose, not you," his voice rising. Elena Park said, "Mara belongs to no one," her tone unshakable. Gabriel Knox said, "We bring this home, not for you, but against you," and the silence after held weight. The ship drifted in silence, stars fixed like scars across the void. Alex Mercer said, "Course set for return," though his voice was hollow. Elena Park said, "Earth won't want the truth," and her eyes burned with fire. Gabriel Knox said, "Truth arrives whether wanted or not," and his jaw stayed tight. The anomalies' shimmer flickered faintly at their stern, as if refusing to vanish. Alex Mercer said, "Mara follows still," and grief bled into his tone. Elena Park said, "Then she is no ghost but a witness," her words trembling. Gabriel Knox said, "Or she is the weapon the agency always wanted," and his glare deepened. Alex Mercer said, "She is mine to carry," and silence pressed down like weight. The mess deck felt cavernous, its silence thicker than gravity. Elena Park said, "When we land, they will silence us," and her voice cracked. Alex Mercer said, "Then we speak before they can," and his tone burned. Gabriel Knox said, "They control the channels," his doubt heavy. Elena Park said, "Not the stars. They can't control the sky," and her gaze lifted. Alex Mercer said, "We broadcast from orbit every frequency at once," and his hands curled into fists. Gabriel Knox said, "It will cost the ship," and the deck groaned like it agreed. Alex Mercer said, "Then the ship dies telling truth," his words firm. Elena Park said, "Better than dying in lies," and silence crowned them. The archive bay glowed cold, files spilling across holographic walls. Elena Park said, her voice is ready for transmission, her hands trembling. Alex Mercer said, "Then the world will hear her," and grief clenched his jaw. Gabriel Knox said, "If the agency intercepts we die unheard," suspicion gnawing his words. The light shaped Mara's face across glass, eyes bright with memory. Elena Park said, "She looks alive," and tears blurred her sight. Alex Mercer said, "She is alive in what they buried," his voice raw. Gabriel Knox said, "Alive or weapon, the world will judge," and silence pressed. Alex Mercer said, "Let them judge, but let them hear," and his hand lowered to the switch. The ship's antenna extended with a groan, old metal straining in defiance. Alex Mercer said, "Signal primed," his voice steady despite fear. Elena Park said, "All channels open," and her fingers flew. Gabriel Knox said, no turning back, his words heavy as stone. The system whined as power drained, lights dimming across the deck. Alex Mercer said, "Mara, speak," and his tone shook with devotion. Her voice rose clear, fractured but undeniable. "They sent me to die, but I live in their silence." Elna Park said, "It's broadcasting," her breath ragged. Gabriel Knox said, "And now the world knows," as alarm screamed. The lights flickered, power draining to silence, the ship fading into dark. Elena Park said, "We gave them truth," her voice soft but fierce. Gabriel Knox said, "Even if it kills us," his tone steady accepting. Alex Mercer said, "Then we die free," and his eyes glowed with quiet fire. The comm hissed one final time, a whisper riding through the static. "Mara," it breathed, clear and eternal, as if carved into the stars. Alex Mercer said, "I carry you always," and his words echoed against the void. The ship drifted, powerless but defiant, a beacon of betrayal and truth. The stars swallowed them, but their voices lingered.